Hello, today I'm going to show you how to make pizza dough. It's simple and it's easy, and you can have a homemade pizza on your table in about 35 minutes. Few and simple ingredients. You need some flour, 3 to 3.5 cups. You'll divide that into a couple of portions. Some rapid rise instant yeast. I like to use the Fleischman's brand, 1 package. Salt, 3/4 teaspoon. Olive oil, 2 tablespoons. And 1 cup of hot water, 120 to 130 degrees. So, before we start assembling our ingredients, the first thing I want to do is turn my oven on to 450 degrees and let it start warming up. You can actually bake the pizza anywhere from 400 to 450, even 475, depending on how crispy you like your crust. Higher the temperature, crispier the crust. I'm also going to go ahead and put a couple of cast iron skillets into the oven. I like to use cast iron. I think it gives it a nice crispy crust. You can use a regular baking sheet or a pizza pan or a pizza stone, whatever you happen to have handy. So I'm going to throw these in the oven so that they can warm up while the oven is warming up. So, over here I also have a bowl for mixing in, a whisk so I can stir with. You can also just use a regular spoon, and I'm going to use a towel here to cover things when I'm done and a board to roll things out on. So, I'm going to start with 1 1/2 cups of flour. I have a 1/2 cup scoop here. I'm actually just stirring up my flour a little bit before I scoop it. You never want to use flour that's too packed it down. So, 1, 2, 3 times a 1/2 cup gives me 1.5 cups. Add my package of rapid rise yeast. 3/4 teaspoon salt. Now, I happen to know how much that is in my hand. If you're not sure, dump some in your hand one day and see what it looks like. I'm going to stir these up. You can use a mixer. I usually do use my mixer and dough hook, but you don't actually need to. Anything will work. So, I'm going to add my hot water here. And I'm going to stir that in. And I'm going to add some oil. And I happen to know how quickly the oil pours out of this guy. And I'm going to add about 2 tablespoons there, and I'm going to stir that up, and you just stir this until the lumps are pretty much gone. Just takes a moment. And the nice thing about this pizza dough is you can make one large pizza, like a 14-inch or so, or a couple of 9 inches, or several small individual pizzas. And you can also put the extra leftover dough if you're making small pizzas in the freezer or the fridge. So now that that's mixed, I'm going to add another cup of flour here, and I'm going to stir that in. And as I was saying, you can put if you don't use all the dough in one night, you can put the leftover dough in the refrigerator for up to a week, or the freezer for 2 months. And you can even, if you want, make it a night ahead or whatever. So this is stirring up. We got a nice little ball going there. So I'm going to put the next 1/2 cup of flour down on the counter. And actually I'm lying. I'm really only going to put about half of it because I'm going to sprinkle the other half on the top as we go. So scrape my dough out of the bowl. Right onto that pile of flour. And I'm just going to put all of that in there. Throw my flour on the top. And we're going to start kneading that. And adding a little flour as we turn, as we knead it. It's still pretty soft and sticky. Your pizza dough should be relatively soft, but you don't want it too sticky. So I'm just going to keep adding some flour in as I turn. When it starts to feel sticky, I'll sprinkle a little more flour in. you'll use anywhere from a half cup to this half cup I've got here. You can also use that last half cup if you need it, if it's still really sticky. If the area is really humid or moist, you might find your dough is a little stickier and you need a little more flour. I find sometimes too with the dough hook I need a little more. Starting to get a little sticky again, so we'll sprinkle on a little more flour as we go. And when you knead the dough, go ahead and use your muscles. Don't be gentle with it. You want to work that dough out. Push it, fold it, turn it, make sure you're getting it all worked good. And if it gets sticky, just add a little more flour. Now, when this dough is done kneading, I'm actually just going to cover it with a towel here, a clean towel I've got handy. And I'm going to let it rest for 10 minutes. And while the dough rests, I can get my pizza ingredients together. Whatever you want on it, your sauce, your cheese, mushrooms, pepperoni, sausage, whatever you happen to like on your pizza. So, dough is kneaded. I'm going to let it rest for 10 minutes. And while the dough is resting, I'm going to get my dough out and I'll see you in about 10 minutes. Okay, our dough has had 10 minutes to rest. As you can see, it's already starting to rise some. So I'm just going to break off a couple of portions because I'm only making 2 small pizzas tonight. And the rest of the dough I'm going to put in a Ziploc bag and throw in the fridge. Always use a large Ziploc bag. Even though you might think that amount of dough will fit in a small Ziploc bag, it will explode after it starts to expand in your refrigerator. So use a large Ziploc bag and squish all the air out because it will expand and make gas. That's what bread does. The rest of this dough I'm going to take, and I'm just going to grab a glass. You could use a rolling pin, but I find bread is just as easy to do with a glass. Or pizza dough. So just sprinkle a little more flour as needed, and you can roll it. You can also try the old stretch method and toss. I don't do very well when I toss pizza dough, so we will not be doing a demo of that. I'm sure you can know someone who does, but it's always fun to try if you care to. So I'm just going to roll it out. And that's, now as far as toppings go, you can put whatever you like on your pizzas. If you can make your own sauce, you can use that, or you can purchase pizza sauce. You can also use any kind of spaghetti sauce, or if you prefer a white pizza, you can just go with that, or you can do a little olive oil and spice. But you can do whatever you like for your pizza doughs. I do find sometimes easier to stretch a little bit by hand too. Try and make sure it's smooth, these thicker sections. You want it reasonably smooth or equal thickness throughout the pizza crust. Okay, we're going to set that aside and roll out our second one. I'm just going to throw that on a paper plate. And get a little more flour on the board. And we'll start rolling this one out. And again, I just roll and stretch. And again, you can get creative with your pizza toppings. Make whatever you like. Or you can do individual pizzas so everybody can make their own. One big pizza, several small pizza. This is a very versatile dough. You could even roll it out and then fold it in half and stuff it and make a calzone. Or you could roll some out and brush it with a little olive oil and sprinkle some garlic on it and cut it in strips and make yourself some breadsticks to go with your pizza. You're only limited by your imagination with this dough, but any kind of thing like that, breadsticks, calzones, any of those items you can make here with this pizza dough. So I think we're just about good there. I think that should be big enough for our pans. So I'm going to get my pans out of the oven. Since I've preheated this, you really do want to be careful when you're handling these pans. They will be hot at this point. You can burn yourself very easily. So I'm going to beat the excess flour off the dough. I also like to put just a little sprinkle of olive oil in the bottom of the pan. I think it helps improve the crispiness of the crust, and I prefer a crispier crust. So I'm going to do that and drop my dough right down in there, and then we'll start filling it. And I'm going to do the same thing with my second pan here. A little olive oil in the bottom to make a crispier crust. Slosh that around. Get the excess flour off our dough and drop them in the pan. And now we're ready to start filling. So make sure you have some hot pads to set it on, or your ingredients are near the stove. And I'm just going to start creating my pizza. Again, you can put whatever toppings you like. I'm rather fond of cheese and pepperoni, if you haven't noticed. But you can add, you know, sausage, mushrooms, onions. Actually, I will add a few mushrooms, I think. I've got a few right here handy. We'll sprinkle those on as well. And then a little more cheese for good measure, because I believe you can never have enough cheese on a pizza. And we need at least 1 or 2 pepperoni on the top for so we'll know what it is. So I'm just going to pop this back in the oven at 756, and we'll put that in there for 10 to 12 minutes, depending on how brown you like your cheese. So I'll see you in 10 minutes. Okay, if you look at the time, it's actually been 35 minutes since I started this video in real time. I'm going to take our pizzas out. They look beautifully done here. So there's 1, there's 2. We can turn our oven off. It's been 35 minutes. I'm just going to grab a scooper to get them out of the pan, and I'm going to let them set on a baking sheet here, or a cooling rack here rather, for a minute. Let them cool off a touch, and then they will be ready to slice and eat. Okay, I've given my pizza a few minutes to cool. All I need to do now is slice it, and I'll be ready to enjoy fresh, hot, homemade pizza. Hope you have enjoyed this video. Please like and share if you have.